Sometimes the truth is far more disturbing than fiction. What began as a carefree hitchhiking trip quickly spiraled into one of the most baffling and chilling missing persons cases in Czech history. This is a story that unravels deeper the closer you look, so let's dive in. It was a warm, sunny day of 8th of August 1988, and two young women named Lenka Muzikova and Illona Vavrikova were excitedly talking about their next adventure. They were both from the city of Plzeň, which is in the western part of the Czech Republic, and they agreed to go away for 5 days together and do some hiking and sightseeing. But because they did not have a lot of money, and also thinking it would be more fun this way, instead of taking a bus or train, they decided to hitchhike most of their way instead. The pair set off on adventures like this all the time. Both were quite free-spirited, very friendly, and extremely adventurous, so they liked the unknown, and their life was definitely not being steered by some rigid rules and schedules. And this was also true for their current trip. The girls just wanted to go away before one of them started a new job, and so they said as much to their friends and family, and simply left. Their plan was to set off on the 8th of August, which was that day, and then come back on the 13th of August. And in terms of where they were headed to, they did discuss a couple of places like visiting the famous Adrspach rocks, which is this large labyrinth of tall rocks, or even Pravčická brána, which is a very famous large sandstone that looks like a bridge. Now, neither of these places are really close to one another, they're actually in a completely different part of the country, but this did not bother the two women at all. They had done similar treks before, and just because the place they wanted to visit was across the whole country, this is something that would not really change their mind. They knew that they were going to find a way to get there, no matter what. And their families, well, they were really used to this. Even though that the two women had never really a firm plan, they would always stop by the local post office and send a postcard, telling their family how much of a great time they were having, and also showing them an image of the place they were currently at. Now, let's also not forget that this was way before mobile phones. And truth to be told, a lot of the homes did not even have landlines at the time. So even if the two did get a phone and wanted to call home, chances are that they would not be able to reach them. But this sort of communication was just the way of how things were in the 80s, and people were used to it. And so they were, standing at a petrol station in Plzeň, looking out for a car that would take them closer to wherever they would ultimately decide to go. And soon enough, the two women spotted a red Skoda 100, and so they walk over to the driver and ask if he could give them a ride. Exactly at the same time, this large tank of petrol arrived at the station to refuel it, and so the manager of the station told everyone to leave, including Lenka and Illona. The girls were disappointed because they felt like they were very close of getting this ride, but ultimately there was nothing they could have done about this, and so they left the petrol station and started walking towards the bus stop, which was just around the corner. They thought that they would have a better chance of stopping someone there because the road headed straight to the capital, so it was usually well frequented. But some time passed and no car was stopping for them. Feeling a little hopeless, the two friends started talking about what other choices they had in terms of getting out of Plzeň, when something finally happened. A large truck stopped right in front of Lenka and Illona. Just a moment later, the truck pulled out of the bus stop and the two women were suddenly gone. On 16th of August, about a week and a half later, Lenka and Illona's families were beside themselves. By now, both girls were supposed to be back. But instead, nobody had heard from them. There were no postcards, there was nothing. The two women always sent those from wherever they traveled to, but this time, nothing was turning up from them. So, not really knowing what else to do, the families decided to visit a police station and report both women missing. A large search began immediately, and their pictures and description was being circulated across all news channels and newspapers. And to that date, this was definitely shaping up to be the country's most profiled search. And soon enough, it would gain a lot of popularity as well. Everyone wanted to find these two women, and their families obviously hoped that this would be done quickly and that the girls could return home safe and well. But weeks went by and there was still no concrete evidence of where Lenka and Illona might be. However, it is not like there was no witnesses coming up. In fact, many people came forward to say that they had seen those two women. The first and most likely best lead came from two older ladies who were sitting at the bus stop opposite of where Illona and Lenka were hitchhiking that Monday on the 8th of August. These two ladies confirmed that they had seen two young women that day trying to stop a car, but apparently cars just kept passing them by. When these two ladies were shown an image of Lenka and Illona, they said that, yep, those were definitely the two girls we saw. They confirmed that one had darker hair and wore long trousers, and the other one had blonde hair and wore shorts that day. They were both standing at the bus stop opposite from them, and so they never really got to talk to them, but they could see that they were clearly trying to get a ride from someone, so the two ladies started discussing how dangerous this actually could be. And then, just before 12 p.m, a truck stopped at the bus station. The two ladies could see the driver, who had a mustache and wore a white t-shirt, and the passenger, who was also a man, getting out of the truck, going over to the back to check something out, then returning to the cabin, and the truck driving immediately off. But as soon as it did, the two young women could no longer be seen at the bus stop. So the theory was that either they got into the truck with those two men, or that some other car went by, stopped on the other side of the truck, the girls hopped in and drove off before being seen. In my opinion, that would be really hard to do, because the road is just a regular two-way street, and so there really wouldn't be the space for all of this to happen without them being seen. Just a few days after the 8th, another sighting of Lenka and Illona was reported. This was by a woman named Jiřina Janovská, who lived in the small village of Teletín. Jiřina saw the two young women who matched the description of Lenka and Illona in the local shop where the two friends were buying some groceries. Jiřina noticed that they bought a couple of lemonades, some lunch meat and bread. She would also go on to say that they were both looking absolutely fine, their clothes were clean, and that overall there was nothing unusual about these two women. And then they would actually strike up a conversation with Jiřina, telling her that they didn't really have much money, but they were really excited because they were there to hike some rocks, and that they planned sleeping on just under the open sky. Jiřina thought that this was a little strange, especially since there were no rocks in the nearby vicinity. But then she remembered hearing on the news that a big thunderstorm was on the way, and so she suggested to the two friends that maybe they should be doing that, at least not until the sky's clear. But apparently the two women said that they didn't really mind this, that they were used to this, and so nothing could change their plans. And after this, they just left. So if this testimony was true, it meant that the two women were still alive and well on the 12th. But at the same time, this also mean that they were no longer intending on coming back on the 13th of August, just like they said they would. Also, let's not forget that they had never sent even one postcard, which was extremely out of character for them. Even if they had little money, this is something they would always budget for, so it made no sense that there was not even 1 cent. This makes me think that the two women Jiřina saw were not Lenka and Illona. Remember, this was in the middle of summer, so there were likely other women like those two, exploring the wilderness and roughing it out like that. They weren't doing anything unheard of, and so someone like them could have been easily mistaken for them. On 17th of August, so a day after the search for Lenka and Illona began, a man came forward to say that he too saw the two women. He was passing by a town called Biela pod Bezdězem, located towards the north of the country, where he spotted the duo. And apparently he was even clutching a newspaper which had a photo of the two men printed on the main page. But for some unknown reason, he never approached them. He didn't say a word to them, and he didn't interact with them at all. And so the two just ended up leaving. The man went on to report this a little bit later, but the two women were already gone by then. As the time went by, there were several other people coming forward with information about Lenka and Illona. On 19th of August, someone allegedly recalled hearing the two saying that they were headed towards Lipno. But this would have made no sense, at least not if they were still sticking to their original plan of visiting rocks. Lipno doesn't have any, and it is also not a place known where these so-called tramps go. Sometimes after this, they were allegedly seen on a bus headed towards Skalice nad Svitavou, which again was on the opposite side of the country. And then at the end of August, they were even seen hitchhiking from Zlín to Vizovice, which again was nowhere near off where they were reported to be seen before. While the police were open to taking all these testimonies in, they were also working on a separate theory alongside this. Of course, it did cross their mind that someone could have attacked the girls, and that this could not be just as simple as a missing persons case. And they did have one particular suspect in mind. This was a man called Miroslav, and he had been known to the police as he had actually been charged on 13 accounts before. But this time, Miroslav actually contacted the police himself, because he said that he had some very important information regarding these two missing women. Apparently, on the 10th of August, Miroslav saw two young women hitchhike, so he stopped over and offered to take them along. But the two women declined his offer, as they said that they were headed elsewhere. And even though this was not much to go on, at least he could provide the police with the location of where this had happened. And he said that he really hoped that this information could lead to locating the two women. But this was not entirely the end of the story. Shortly after this, another woman named Muzikova came forward with a very disturbing claim. She confessed that she had met Miroslav before when she herself was trying to catch a ride. Miroslav offered to drive her, but during the journey he became more and more annoying. He was trying to make a pass at her, he wanted to know where she lived, and he even offered to let her stay at his place and that he would show her around. Illona would eventually ask Miroslav to stop the car and she would get out, but not before having a chilling conversation with him. Illona confessed to him that she was becoming scared, and that she thought that maybe she got into the wrong car and now that he, Miroslav, was going to kill her. She even mentioned the two girls, Lenka and Illona, whom she read about in the newspapers, and thought that their story was very sad, but she also hoped that she would not end up like them. But when Miroslav heard this, he said that she had nothing to worry about, because he himself had given the pair a ride. He said that he had known Illona from before, so when he spotted the two women hitchhiking, he knew he wanted to help them straight away. This testimony, of course, directly contradicted to what Miroslav had confessed to the police himself, and so based on this, they decided to really look into him. They started tailgating him, watching him 24/7 just to see what his routine was. And soon enough, they came across their first real clue. When they inspected his car, they found a strand of hair that could have belonged to one of the missing women. But after some testing, this clue actually ended up leading nowhere, as the hair did not prove to be an exact match. Even though there was no direct link, or at least none the police could see, there were other avenues the investigators were looking into. On 13th of August, so the day when Lenka and Illona were supposed to return home, a woman living near Adrspach rocks went out for a walk. As she walked into the woods close to the rocks, she saw that there was something on the ground that would usually not be there. So she went closer to it and realized that it was a small campfire, and that someone must have been staying there very recently. The ground looked as if someone had been sleeping there, and she also found this empty bottle with a piece of paper in it. So curious, the woman pulled a piece of paper out and revealed to be a short letter. And this letter read, "Hello friends, thanks very much for not showing up. We waited for 2 nights, but now we're going to Adrspach, so maybe see you there. Bye, Lenka." Not really knowing what else to do, the woman put the message back, turned around and walked back into the town to get the police. But when she and an officer returned to that spot later on, the bottle with the message was gone. However, this clue was not the only one. In the second part of August, a man named Petr contacted the police to say that he had seen Lenka and Illona with 2 foreign men, and he would go on to tell them a very haunting story. The 4 were staying in a camp called Rozkosz, located near Česká Skalice in the northern part of the country. The first of those 2 men spoke in Polish and German, whereas the other one spoke in German only, but Petr remembered that they had a car with an Austrian license plate. Then, one very early morning, Petr overheard a very disturbing conversation among them. He was still in his tent, but he could tell that it was the same people talking. The first man said, "Load her into the car and let's get out of here." To which a woman's voice replied, "But Illona is naked." And after this, Petr heard the second man say, "It doesn't matter, we will dress her up later on." So Petr opened up his tent a little bit just to see what was really going on there. And it was around 4 o'clock in the morning, so it was still a little bit dark, but Petr could clearly see that there were the 3 people carrying a woman over to the car with the Austrian license plate. He could not tell whether she was naked or clothed, but he could see that they put her into the back seat of the car, and then themselves got in and immediately drove away. But this was not the last time Petr saw the car. He decided to pack his camp up that same day and then headed for a town called Náchod. But as he was driving past some fields, he spotted that car again. It was parked along the road and it looked like it was abandoned, but when Petr would pass that spot again later that day, the car was gone. Now unfortunately, when Petr was given this testimony, he would not give any more information about that car, which meant that the police didn't have anything to go on and could not even alert the border control. And so unfortunately, this did not lead the investigators anywhere new. However, there will be one more testimony that really interested the police. This came from a man named Rodolf, who said that he knew of a couple of young women who ended up being the victims of aggravated assault near the town of Kokotín. Now, Rodolf could not really tell them many details about this assault, but he did hint that it could have been a result of an accident, and that the 2 women's bodies were either disposed of in one of the wells or buried in a local cemetery. But when the investigators went on to search the area, they discovered nothing. No clues, no bodies, nothing. Now, so far all these testimonies sounded plausible. None of what had been said sounded like it could not have happened. But soon, the police did start to hear about another alternative. And this one sounded like it was lifted straight out of the horror movie. This theory was actually stemming from a film that was being shown in cinemas all over the country at the time. This German movie called Spare Parts told a story about a black ambulance which kidnapped and killed people only to go on to harvest their organs. The film was very popular at the time, and so many people started to speculate that maybe there was someone out there who was reliving the film in real life. And this was fueled by the fact that there were many reported sightings in and around Plzeň of a similar looking black ambulance. Not only that, but this theory became especially supported when one of the early witnesses added that the car he had seen Lenka and Illona get to could have been an ambulance car. Up to that point, all of those stories were just seen as an absurd theory, only fueled by strange films. But then something terrifying happened. On the 24th of November, there were 2 accounts of people being stalked by a black ambulance. One was a woman who reported being stalked on the way back home, and the other was of 4 college girls who saw a black ambulance stopping right in front of them, 2 men getting out and trying to kidnap them. Luckily, the girls did manage to escape, but sadly nothing ever came out of this lead. So we shall never really know whether there was something tangible behind this theory, or whether people were just so scared of this black ambulance that they started seeing it everywhere, thinking it was out there to get them. The final clue and testimony came from a man who on the 9th of August was returning from Prague after attending his trial. This man confirmed that he saw Lenka and Illona on a train heading towards Roudnice nad Labem, which is located in the northern part of the country. The 2 women were on their own, and during their journey, the man overheard them talking about visiting either Hřensko or Děčín. The man did say that both women looked as if they were only going trekking, with one wearing long jeans and the other one shorts. And this was particularly interesting because it was in line with the 2 witnesses from the 8th of August in Plzeň, when they had seen Lenka and Illona trying to catch a ride that day. This testimony would also confirm that the 2 women were still alive on the 9th, and by the looks of it, they were still on track to go hiking in the northern part of the country. But not all of this was good news. This would also mean that they were headed to the same location of where a tragedy struck not so long ago. Just a year earlier, in Hřensko, 3 hikers were found dead, but their killer was never found. This could have meant that not only was the murderer still at large, but they could have been residing in the same area, waiting on their next victim. Now fast forward to 1992, Hřensko was yet again confirmed as the most likely location of where the 2 women visited. A man that sold souvenirs at the famous Pravdivská brána came forward to say that Lenka and Illona bought a postcard at his stall. But because this was now several years later, he was not able to give any more details, and he could also not have been absolutely sure that it was definitely the 2 missing women. Now at that point the search was still ongoing, but after 1990 the archives are actually somewhat harder to access, and so we actually publicly don't know all the details about this case. But what is interesting is the fact that this man was also the same man who had seen those 3 hikers a year earlier that ended up being murdered around there. Now, was this just a coincidence, or could there be something more behind this? The search for Lenka and Illona was the largest the country had ever experienced at that point, and it was also the first time that a helicopter was also deployed. But to no avail. The 2 women have never been found, and to this date we still have no answers. Unfortunately, if they went missing around Hřensko, the rocks would have made it almost impossible to give us any clues since they are so large and vast. It is entirely possible that the 2 girls could have slipped and fallen, but equally, they could have come across the wrong person at the wrong time. Let me know what your theory is, and before I release a new video, go check this one out. Until next time.